Grayson Perry is a British artist whose work often challenges our concept of things like beauty, class, and ritual. Several years ago, he did a three-part TV series on our sense of taste and style, with each episode exploring people's concept of beauty through the lens of class. Working class, middle class, think upper middle class here for the US translation, and the nobility. Perry grew up working class and now finds himself firmly in the British middle class, and he was wondering about how taste changes in relationship to people's social mobility. Because he noticed that as he moved into wealthier circles, his definition of what is beautiful expanded in some ways and became restricted in others. Before I watched this series, I remember thinking, surely my sense of taste is unique. I feel like I'm a very original person. But Perry found some distinctive hallmarks of middle class taste. Decorating with objects from travels, virtue signaling, either by using certain brands or by buying objects that convey certain moral codes, and a desire for one's taste to double as a moral statement. Oof, I felt seen. Here I thought I was being original, but actually I was just being influenced by my community. Imagine. Turns out no one is an island after all. So it should come as no surprise when, if I'm scrolling on social media or walking down a street full of shops or perusing this week's art fair in Ann Arbor, that I would want to take part in what I'm seeing. The question, of course, before any purchase should be, do I really think this is beautiful or necessary? Or am I just buying this to fit in, either to the system or to my community? I noticed an Amazon delivery vehicle that said, "Warning, contents may cause happiness." But the world is groaning under our excesses. How many of us have purchased something that seemed like a good idea in the moment, and then we got it home and realized it wasn't actually what we needed? How many of us have ordered something online in the moment and then realized quickly that it wasn't going to deliver the happiness that we thought it promised? And those are some big promises. Current buzzwords and phrases include life-changing and this product is disrupting the industry. And no joke, on a recent search for a neoprene laptop sleeve, the top review said, "OMG, this is so incredible. I am without words to describe the joy I have for owning this case. I truly was in the dark and now I have found the light and it is brilliant. Please buy this item. It will change your life." I mean, if it does its job, a neoprene laptop sleeve should protect my laptop from getting soaked the next time I have to bike in a downpour. But is it really going to change my life? We know that climate change has been made a lot worse by our buying habits, and we're seeing the impacts in real time this summer as fires, floods, smoke, and heat waves engulf huge parts of the northern hemisphere. Our habits are tough to break, especially with all the messages that surround us to buy more, that this one thing will bring you all the joy you need in your life. Plus, we know that local businesses and our whole system suffer if we completely stop participating in our economy on a large scale. But surely there must be another way. In a society that has increasingly taught itself to love things and use people rather than using things and loving people, how do we find a way forward? As with so many problems, we can often find that the solution isn't that simple. Living into a binary concept of good and evil doesn't quite work, and going all or nothing can result in serious harm to ourselves and others. It would be easy to interpret both Paul and Matthew's messages to us today to say that if we perceive something to be bad, we need to get rid of it right away. But of course, it's not that simple. Here, a little Greek is helpful. The word for flesh in Romans 8 doesn't actually equate the body with sin. According to Richard Rohr, the Greek word sarx is best understood as ego, because a different word, soma, which Paul doesn't use here, is the word for the physical body. Sarx is the concept of the self as unrelated to others, a posture toward God, the world, and the self. Brian Bantam takes this thought further and writes, quote, "I wonder if, when Paul says flesh, he might mean You are living in a society that is asking you to consume or to be content being consumed. Empire wants all of you, but there is another way. Maybe Paul means don't live according to the flesh. Do not live according to the patterns of accumulation, of use, of disposability, end quote. But we do live in a society that is addicted to disposability. Even when I try to cut down on my waste, I find that there's a constant assumption that I want packaging on everything I buy. Why do the clothes I order come in a plastic bag inside another plastic bag? I wanted the clothes, not the unboxing experience of opening multiple layers of material that I will throw away that most likely won't even get recycled if I try. And I'm not fooled either. I know that workers in stores have to remove all that plastic before they put out their merchandise, too. Often, even when I try to opt out of so much waste, I find that I am unwillingly opting in. And we live in a society that treats its people as if they are disposable too. Texas just put a law into place that prevents cities from enacting heat-related worker protections. In June, a 24-year-old died as a result of that lack of protection. And OSHA fined the company just $13,000 for his death. That's not a fine. That's the cost of doing business. We'd rather spend money on incarceration than the things that reduce incarceration: education, early childhood intervention, food and housing security, and lead mitigation, to name a few. We don't pay attention to why our food and our products are so inexpensive compared to a few decades ago. It's because we don't ensure that workers are paid a living wage to make the things we purchase. Creation is groaning under our patterns of use and abuse. It's unsustainable. And yet, we hope for things that aren't visible. In our gospel text, the weeds, in Greek, the word here is zizania, a specific plant that looks like wheat right up until it ripens. These weeds grow right alongside the wheat. But the wheat has to grow in tension with the zizania, which is imperceptibly different, or risk being uprooted entirely. The wheat doesn't get to live free of its weedy neighbors. It's the same with us. The part of myself that I'd rather not acknowledge, the part that wants to hoard rather than be generous, the part that is easily swayed by advertising that claims my life will be made so much better with just this one product, the part that thinks of myself as completely separate from and independent of the rest of the world, that's a part of me that will be with me as long as I am on this earth. Neither Paul nor Matthew are engaged in an us versus them argument. The ego is part of the self. The desire for riches is part of the self. The desire to climb the social ladder and look to those who are richer is part of the self. We can't shake it. And yet, God's baptismal promise to us is that we are God's children, heirs of God's promise, connected to each other. Each time we take communion together, we're reminded that we're not doing this life alone. In these two sacraments, which are God's means of grace, we are reminded that our lives are always intrinsically connected, that nothing we do and no part of ourselves can ever separate us from the love of God. In the midst of God's creation, whose groans we are currently witnessing, the hope that's difficult to see is what binds us together. It's tempting to despair, but we are called to hope even when things seem bleak. Hope is an act of courage, of trust that we're not alone, and it's infectious in all the best ways. True hope is honest about reality, but proclaims the goodness of God and the possibilities that exist apart from our own individual capabilities. Hope proclaims that where one person's tenacity and determination will always be insufficient, when we remember that we are intrinsically connected to God and to each other, a new creation is possible. Amen.